All right, get ready, because today we're going deep on, well, kind of a funny one, Minnesota's smallest state park, Franz Jevne.
Smallest, you say?
Yeah, seriously. Under 120 acres, picture maybe a couple of football field max.
Wow, that's a tiny for a state park.
Right. But here's the thing. This little park, it's jam-packed with history, amazing scenery, and even, get this, some pretty surprising things to do there.
Okay, now I'm intrigued, I have to admit.
So to get the full picture, we've dug into all sorts of stuff, hiking guides, blogs, the park website, even a clip from a YouTuber's road trip video.
Sounds like a real deep dive.
Oh, it is. And it really proves that sometimes good things do come in small packages.
Like finding a rare wildflower, tucked away in the middle of a busy city. The contrast just makes it that much more special.
Exactly. One blog called Franz Jevne, get this, bantamweight park that packs a punch.
I like that.
Me too. So it's off the beaten path near Birchdale, Minnesota, right on the Rainy River, which is the border with Canada.
Ah, so that location itself already adds a whole other layer to things. The Rainy River's got such a long history, shaping the landscape, and really influencing all people who lived along it for, well, centuries, right?
You're right, and speaking of history, this park's origin story is pretty cool. It's named for Franz Jevne, a lawyer there, and the land, donated by his sons.
I bet there's a story behind that.
Oh, there is. See, the original idea was for a much bigger state park, over 1,300 acres. But the Jevne family, they specifically kept this piece of land.
Interesting.
And then years later, they decided to donate it. So we get this incredibly, well, almost intimate special park as a result.
Makes you wonder, what was it about those 120 acres that meant so much to them?
Right. But the story goes way back, way before the Jevnes even. There's signs of people being in that area for thousands of years.
Yeah, we can't forget about the indigenous peoples who called this region home long before any modern names were even thought of. Archaeologically speaking, we're talking about a human presence in the Rainy River Basin going back almost 10,000 years.
10,000 years in that little space.
It's amazing, isn't it? The layers of time.
And speaking of layers, there are burial mounds within the park too, right?
There are, and they actually tie into a bigger story. Across the river, over in Canada, you've got the Manitou Burial Mounds, now a National Historic Site. It all points to this region just being rich with indigenous history and culture, stretching back way before any of the borders we see on a map today.
It's like the modern park sits on top of, I don't know, echoes of all those years.
Exactly, and when we talk about the Ojibwe people, their name for the nearby rapids is really beautiful. Ginwajuwanang, the place of long rapids, just rolls off the tongue.
The Long Salt Rapids in English, those were formed by, what, glacial meltwater carving through the bedrock, right?
Over millennia, yep. And for the Ojibwe people, those rapids were Lytle, a major fishing ground, especially for lake sturgeon.
Sturgeon.
Huge fish, but for them, it wasn't just about food. Sturgeon played this big role in their culture, even their spirituality.
So this tiny park, it holds billions of years in the rocks themselves, and then on top of that, all these human stories woven into the landscape.
Yeah, that's what makes it so much more than just a pretty place. It's like stepping into a living story that's been unfolding for ages, layer by layer.
Okay, so we've got size, location, a little bit of history, but what about actually experiencing Franz Jevne today? What do people do there?
Well, you can't talk about this park without mentioning those incredible rock outcroppings, the 2.5 billion-year-old ones.
2.5 billion? That's older than dinosaurs even.
Way older. To put it in perspective, those rocks were around before the continents as we know them even existed.
Whoa.
Right? And they're not just there for us to ponder the age of the Earth, although you could certainly do that. They offer these incredible panoramic views of the river. Some are even perfect for a picnic, or if you're lucky, some wild blueberry picking.
You're kidding?
Nope. And I even saw some folks online talking about foraging for mushrooms there. Apparently, the park's a bit of a haven for mushroom enthusiasts.
So you can touch history, have a snack, and maybe find dinner all in one spot. Not bad.
Not bad at all. But if you're more into walking than foraging, there are 2.5 miles of hiking trails weaving through the park. And one of them is even part of the Minnesota Hiking Club trail system. I saw on All Trails it's got a pretty decent rating.
Actually, there are two main trails listed on all trails. The Franz Jevne Hiking Club Trail, which is rated moderate, and then the Franz Jevne Loop, which is considered easier. But both seem to have great views.
Can't go wrong either way then.
What about for people who want to, I don't know, really soak it all in? Is there camping?
Oh yeah, Franz Jevne's got 21 rustic campsites. Picture this. Campfire under the stars, listening to the sounds of the river. 18 are drive-in and 3 are walk-in, so you've got options.
Rustic, you said. What's that like?
Think cozy and simple, back to basics, and we saw in a travel blog that some of the campsites even have these Adirondack-style picnic shelters.
Ah, those are charming. At least from the pictures.
They really add to the whole rustic atmosphere. It's all about experiencing nature in a more, I guess you could say, raw and simple form.
And speaking of raw nature, the Rainy River is pretty famous for its fishing, right? Walleye, northern pike, all that.
Oh yeah, smallmouth bass, even sturgeon. It came up a lot in the blogs and guides we looked at.
You know what's funny? That YouTuber we mentioned, he tried fishing from the riverbank and struck out completely.
Maybe he just needed to find a better spot or get some local tips.
You're probably right. But even without catching anything, just being on that river with all that scenery has to be pretty amazing.
Absolutely. And even in winter, the park has something to offer. Might be quieter, but the trails are perfect for snowshoeing.
So, Franz Jevne might be tiny, but it doesn't skimp on things to do. Hiking, camping, fishing, snowshoeing. It's like a mini adventure hub for anyone who wants a quieter, more rustic kind of outdoor experience.
It really shows you sometimes those smaller, more intimate places, they end up being the most rewarding ones.
That's a great point. So we've covered the basics, but now I think it's time to get into what really makes Franz Jevne stand out. Those unique features, the stuff that sets it apart from all the other parks out there.
You mean like the fact that they haven't tried to overdevelop it? I mean, the limited amenities, at first you might think that's a bad thing, but...
It's like they're saying, hey, you're here to truly escape.
Right, and one blog pointed out that even Highway 67 is permanently closed. So to get there, you have to take this kind of roundabout route. They called it ultimate seclusion.
Sounds like a real challenge to get there.
But that remoteness is a big part of why people love it. It's a place to truly disconnect, to slow down, and kind of get back in tune with those natural rhythms of life that, well, let's face it, we lose touch with pretty easily.
Almost like those limited amenities are a test, Can you really handle being away from it all?
It's more of an invitation, I'd say. An invitation to rediscover the simple things, cooking over a fire, looking at the stars, just being present without all the usual distractions. What do you think? Could you handle it?
Honestly, I think it'd be a welcome challenge. We're so bombarded with information these days, so much stimulation, that, yeah, a place like Franz Jevne where you have to unplug, engage with nature directly, that sounds pretty amazing.
There's definitely a sense of peace that comes from being somewhere where nature is the main attraction. And from what we've seen, that seems to be what really resonates with people who visit.
Yeah, a lot of them called it a peaceful retreat or a hidden gem, a place they go back to again and again to get away from everything.
There's something almost, I don't know, sacred about that, finding sanctuary in nature.
But before we move on, there's one more unique thing about Franz Jevne we have to mention.
The border, right, being right on the edge of the U.S.
You got it. The Rainy River, it's not just a pretty river, it's like this reminder that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. Standing there knowing you're looking across at another country.
It adds a whole other level of, I don't know, intrigue, wouldn't you say? Makes you think beyond those lines on a map and about the natural heritage that connects us all, regardless of what country we're in.
And the park itself, it kind of embodies that. It's this landscape shaped by millennia of natural forces and human interaction, and it all just ignores those modern political boundaries. It's like a little microcosm of the world, showing us that despite all our differences, we share this planet.
Powerful message, especially in a world that can feel so divided sometimes. Maybe Franz Jevne can be a little reminder that we've got more in common than we think.
I like that. A reminder that nature doesn't care about borders, and neither should we when it comes to appreciating its beauty and protecting it.
Well said.
So we've uncovered a lot about Franz Jevne already, a place that really truly defies expectations. But we're not done yet.
Welcome back. It's amazing how much we found out about Franz Jevne State Park already.
I know, right? It's tiny, but there's so much to it. Like when we were talking about those 2.5 billion-year-old rock outcropping.
Oh, yeah.
I was just thinking, what would it be like to stand on something that old? Like, they were around before the continents even look like they do now.
Mind-boggling, right? It makes you think about all those forces that shape them. Volcanoes, glaciers, the Earth's plates moving over millions of years.
And now we get to just walk around on them.
I wonder if most people even realize just how ancient those rocks are when they're visiting.
Probably not, but that's part of what makes the park so special. You're literally touching history.
It's not just about the rocks themselves, though. It's about all the stories they hold,
Right, like those layers of human history we talked about. People have been living along the Rainy River for thousands of years. It's kind of amazing.
And those burial mounds, both in the park and over in Canada, they really show that they're not just something from the past. They're a direct connection to the people who lived there before us.
It makes you feel like you're part of this long chain, this ongoing story.
And speaking of stories, the one about how Franz Jevne State Park came to be is pretty fascinating, too.
Oh yeah, the lawyer whose sons donated the land.
Franz Jevne, yep. And they specifically asked for it to be named after him, which is touching, but the thing that gets me is they held on to that 120-acre piece, even when a much bigger park was in the works.
Yeah, what? Just that little spot.
It must have had a special meaning to them, something beyond just the size or the location. Maybe it was those amazing views or those unique rock formations or just, I don't know, the peacefulness of the place.
You're right, we'll never know for sure, but it's a good reminder that sometimes the most powerful experiences are found in the smallest places.
Exactly. And it seems like the Jevne family, without even meaning to maybe, they created something truly special for all the visitors who come to Franz Jevne now.
From everything we've read, it sounds like it's this perfect mix of being alone in nature, amazing scenery, and still having things to do.
It really does have something for everyone, whether you're a hiker, a fisherman, or just someone who wants to get away from it all for a bit. And we can't forget about those Adirondack-style picnic shelters at the campsites. Have you ever seen one?
Not in person, no, just pictures.
They're really cool. Classic design, simple but elegant. Open sides usually with that gaby roof and those slanted wooden slats. They totally add to the feeling of getting away from everything, experiencing a simpler life.
I could just imagine sitting under one, listening to the river, surrounded by those rock formations. Talk about a change of pace.
Right, and that's what draws people to Franz Jevne. It's a chance to slow down, get away from the digital world, and reconnect with, I don't know, just the natural rhythms of life.
And it's not just about relaxing either. There's plenty to keep you active, too, if that's your thing.
Definitely. 2.5 miles of hiking trail, some easy, some moderate, going through all sorts of landscapes from forest to those rocky outcrops, and always those amazing views of the river.
And of course, the Rainy River is famous for its fishing. We keep hearing about walleye, northern pike, even sturgeon.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, did any of our listeners ever try their luck there? Be interesting to hear their stories, you know?
I'd love to hear if anyone's caught a sturgeon in the Rainy River. But even without catching anything, just being out there in that setting has to be pretty special.
Absolutely. And even in the winter, when things are quieter, those trails are perfect for snowshoeing. It's like a whole other way to see the park.
Peaceful, I bet.
I think so. It just keeps coming back to this idea that Franz Jevne, for being so tiny, it offers such a range of experiences. It's almost like a little world unto itself.
Right. They've got ancient rocks, human history, all these different plants and animals and opportunities for both adventure and peace and quiet, all packed into this tiny space.
Goes to show you, size really isn't everything. Sometimes those smaller, less well-known spots are the ones that hold the biggest surprises.
It's like finding a hidden treasure. And speaking of hidden treasures, we have to talk about that one thing that makes Franz Jevne totally unique compared to other Minnesota state parks.
You mean it being right on the border?
Yeah, the Rainy River. Not every park can say they're international.
It definitely adds another dimension to the whole experience. A reminder that, well, nature doesn't follow the lines we draw on maps, does it?
Imagine standing on that riverbank, looking across at Canada, and knowing that this river has been a point of connection and maybe even conflict for hundreds of years.
Makes you think, right? The natural world just keeps flowing no matter what's going on around it. And Franz Jevne, in a way, it represents that. It's this landscape that's been shaped by forces way bigger than any political boundaries.
Like a little microcosm of the world, a reminder that even with all our differences, we're connected by this planet, and that we share a responsibility to take care of it.
It's a powerful thought, especially these days when things can feel so divided. Maybe Franz Jevne can be a reminder that we're not so different after all.
I like that. A reminder that nature doesn't recognize borders, and neither should our appreciation for it or our efforts to protect it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It's amazing how much this little park has to offer. So much more than meets the eye. But we're not quite done yet. In the final part of our deep dive, we're going to explore some of the bigger themes that Franz Jevne brings up. The ideas that go beyond just the park itself.
I can't wait. It's incredible how much we can learn from a place that's less than 120 acres.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most important lessons come in the smallest packages. It's been really interesting digging into Franz Jevne. It's more than just facts and figures, isn't it? It's like the park makes you use your imagination.
It does. It invites you to slow down, really take it all in.
Not try to be everything to everyone, that's for sure.
Right. It's this small, quiet space that offers a very specific kind of experience. One that's all about simplicity, solitude, being in nature.
It's like those picnic shelters we talked about, the Adirondack ones.
Oh, yeah.
They're not fancy, but they just fit, you know?
Totally. And no Wi-Fi, no paved trails. It all adds to that feeling of getting away from everything, all the noise.
Like they're saying, if you can't handle being unplugged, this isn't the park for you.
I wouldn't say it's a test exactly, more like an invitation.
Okay, an invitation.
To really disconnect and remember what it's like to just be.
And you know what's funny? At first, you might think those limited amenities would be a bad thing, but
But everyone seems to love it.
exactly. It's like they're seeking that out almost.
I think it goes back to that idea of finding sanctuary, a place where you can escape all the information underload, the constant stimulation.
Yeah, like hitting the reset button on your brain.
You have to slow down, pay attention to the little things, the sounds, the smells.
Take a deep breath.
And you start to appreciate those simple things again. The sunshine, the birds singing, little things you'd normally just miss.
It's like those things are always there, but we forget to notice them.
Franz Jevne notice.
And that's something this park does really well, despite being so small. It creates that space for you to reconnect, both with yourself and with nature.
Before we wrap up, I want to go back to something we keep coming back to, that unique feature of Franz Jevne.
The border.
Yep, the Rainy River. It's not just a line on a map, is it? It's a symbol.
Totally. It shows how interconnected the natural world is, even when we try to divide it up with lines.
You stand on that riverbank, looking across at Canada, and you can't help but feel that shared history, that connection.
It's a powerful reminder, especially these days, that despite all our differences, we all share this one planet.
And Franz Jevne, in a way, it embodies that. It's this landscape that's been shaped by forces way bigger than any human-made border.
Like all that history, all those stories, all those different plants and animals, all squeezed into this tiny space, existing together.
It's humbling, right? Maybe that's the biggest lesson we can take away from Franz Jevne. We're all interconnected. We share a responsibility to this planet and nature. Well, nature always finds a way.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's safe to say that Franz Jevne is a park that defies expectations. It's small, but it's full of surprises.
A hidden gem, for sure. A place that rewards anyone who takes the time to discover it.
If you're intrigued by what you've heard today, we encourage you to learn more about Franz Jevne State Park. Maybe even plan a visit. See it for yourself.
And remember, sometimes the most rewarding journeys are the ones that take us off the beaten path, to those unexpected places that change the way we see the world.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.